Thursday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid 70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Being part of all of this. Kind of creepy how that dissolve really kind of matches my head. Sometimes the AI gets it right. I have found, I don't know if you've done anything with some of this AI stuff, whether it's Chat GTP or anything, but I've noticed something, especially about the image generation. It misses stuff. It's our dear friend John who did that AI image for our streaming show here on YouTube and Rumble. It had 3 humps in the letter M. Things like that. It doesn't have all this stuff in there, but that's regardless. That's just something I noticed the other day, and I just said that's an oddment anyway. Lots to do today, and many things going on. Of course, live phone calls are back, and if you missed yesterday's program, 434-882-4217, and we'll just chat with you right here, right now. No more leaving messages and playing back recordings and having me misunderstandify anything you said. Of course, you can also chat with us through the Rumble and the YouTube chat features. And email jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com is all of those things. I want to start off, though, with a shameless plug. We're going to be at an event on the 25th. It's called Vets for Vets, and it's to raise money for the VFW in Stanton and Waynesboro, and it's sponsored by a bunch of the great car dealers in that area. I was talking to them. It'll be the first place you'll be able to see me in person in a month and a half. But we'll be broadcasting live from there. Vets for Vets. Give them the screen again on it. And again, thanks to all the car dealers supporting it. The car show to benefit veterans' causes in the area. And you get to hang out with me and chat about things. So in person as well. Confrontations and commutations there. So however it is you wish to get along with us, you can do so. But again, live phone calls now, 434-882-4217 on this Wednesday morning. Some stunning abortion statistics I want to get into with you, plus the case conviction of somebody who actually was in an abortionist's office and tried to block access to it, and used much of the same tactics that we see the left use when they're trying to protest, say, for the oppressed. Oh my gosh. Right here, right in front of you, I just had an epiphany. This is how we do it. All right, come close. Come really close. So, let's have a campaign. It's going to take a little while, but let's start a campaign to have unborn babies declared an oppressed group. We can brand the mothers as colonizers. Yeah, that's it. We just need to have the unborn infants declared an oppressed. Somebody knows somebody. I guarantee somebody knows somebody in the PR firm that helped rebrand Hamas as an oppressed group. So listen, don't tell anyone right now. But let's start a movement to have the unborn babies declared an oppressed group, and then they'll start protesting for them because they have to. I could have had a V8. I mean, right here in front of you. Epiphany all over the place. Just Mop on aisle 5, please. Anyway, but that notwithstanding, also, is your free speech rights tied to the platform you do it? Or if YouTube didn't like that last segment we just did there, the creepy get close to the camera stuff, and this violates our code of conduct. You got too close to the camera, Joe. If YouTube, because I'm on strike 3. I'm in the hole 0-2 right now on YouTube. I've had my mulligan, and I've already got 2 strikes hanging on me, and Max Scherzer's gripping the slider. If YouTube decides that whole declared unborn babies, that's a bridge too far for us, Joe. You're out. Have my free speech rights been infringed? Can I bring a First Amendment case against YouTube for that? Now think about it, because there's an influencer, an industry I never expected to be reporting on my radio or streaming shows. But here, as we celebrate Law Enforcement Week, does law enforcement have to look out for the influencer who is afraid that the House and Senate will ban TikTok from existing, or force it to be sold to somebody that they may not like, or might change the rules? Maybe Elon Musk buys it. Not that. We'll get into that as well. Here's your next run for the hills moment. The Virginia Senate has announced they're going to make sure that this never happens again. Yes, they've decided that the campus unrests that gripped the places like UVA and Virginia Tech, the Virginia Senate is going to sit a committee down of senators. They'll pick a blue ribbon panel of senators, and they will come up with a way that you won't be able to gather in large crowds and threaten anyone anymore. So pretty sure somewhere in here. I'm pretty sure there's rules against that already. We don't need a new Senate subcommittee to come up with ways to get the Senate members on the evening news, which again is exactly why they do things like this. This is simply to get a bunch of Virginia senators on the evening news. It's not going to do. We already. This is the gobsmackingly frustrating part of this. We already have all the rules in place you need. You don't need a new batch. So it becomes so patently obvious that the only reason they do this, it is to me anyway, and again, live phone calls. It's not. There are other industries that use the word live the way I am. Live impromptu phone calls as opposed to live dancers or. Well, and you don't need to bring $1 with you. But you tell me, given the fact that you already have laws on the books that say you can't gather in large crowds and threaten small crowds of other people with physical harm, either in the abstract to anyone of their religious belief or otherwise, since we already have laws on the books about that, what exactly is this Senate committee going to do, except the sadly obvious, and I hate to spoil the surprise for everyone, but this committee's only job is going to be get committee members out. And in the worst case scenario, they will, because they don't want to be seen as being giving in or proving Joe's point correct. Joe Thomas in the morning. Did you hear what he said? He said we're not going to do anything. We'll show him. So let's just say, some of those senators say, we'll show those talk show hosts, we'll show them we're going to actually come up with new laws. That's the worst case scenario, because a lot of our liberties have already gone poof in a cloud of vape smoke. because some politician sitting on one of these committees whose only job is to get them on the news decides, we should probably actually come up with some new laws. What do you say about that? And each time a little bit more of your liberty dies. It's like when the bell goes off in It's a Wonderful Life. Instead of an angel getting its wings, a devil gets another pitchfork and some more brimstone. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. There are already sufficient rules, and the proof of that is the navel-gazing self-urination of the university communities in Charlottesville and Blacksburg over, they didn't have to, grab us. They did, so there were laws that said we weren't allowed to be there anymore. We were just laying there. We were stopping the man. Well, the man can pick you then up if you are violating the rules. I know that. And speaking of these civil disobedience, when we get back, I want to ask you a question. Again, live impromptu calls, says the big billboard on the side of it. Live nude opinions. No, maybe that's a bridge too far. But when we get back, where are all the poignant documentaries about the law enforcement officers that faced the rioters all the way through the Summer of Love in 2020 in the Chop Chaz zone and places like that? The law enforcement officers trying to guard federal courthouses against riots. Where are the stories? I mean, it is Law Enforcement Week, and I'm not disparaging, but, as we celebrate Law Enforcement Week, we're being hit with people who are telling you how bad the January 6th rioters were. What about all the Antifa protests of the previous summer?
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
NASCAR's in-season tourney. That's our next.
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Or clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM.
The Cup Series is getting a really cool mid-season shakeup next year. A 5-race, 32-driver, $1 million to the winner in-season tournament. The tournament will span the TNT part of the schedule, with seating coming from the last 3 races on Amazon Prime. Drivers will advance to the next round by finishing better than the driver they are racing against. In the 5th race, it will be down to 2 drivers head-to-head for $1 million. It will be interesting to see if the tourney brings fans to their TVs during a part of the season that's typically down in the TV ratings department. Reaction to the news from drivers? Positive. Haven't seen a negative comment yet. From the fans? A bit more mixed.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning on this Wednesday at 434-882-4217 live impromptu phone calls. No singles required. We'll take your sky-clad opinions all through the morning. Any of the stuff, and if you've been pent up, if there have been things you've wanted to talk about over the last month or so, and you haven't had a chance to, also, 434-882-4217. I was charted by a friend who, interestingly enough, never calls, that I don't take enough phone calls. And I said, you mean over the past month? He goes, yeah, I've watched your YouTube show. You don't take any phone calls. I said, you watch a lot? He said, well, I watch when I can. I said, you must not have heard me say we didn't have the technology in place to take phone calls at that point. He goes, oh, I didn't know that. So for those who worry when show hosts repeat themselves over and over, it's because people are popping in and out all over the place. But please, if you're watching this after 8 a.m., 434-882-4217, you'll leave a voicemail. We can get it for you after that. But we will take your thoughts as they rumble about you. And because it is law enforcement, police week, and you have to respect the perilous position that police officers put themselves in, and we got into chapter and verse yesterday on the constitutional place a police officer is. And understand, police officers work for your elected officials. And just like I said, those elected officials will gather in these special committees to come up with new laws that make them look like they're doing something when they're just infringing other people's freedoms. And that's the harsh reality of it. So in the abstract, in the response to the campus protests in favor of or against, depending on how you want to view it, in favor of Hamas terrorism or against Israeli, what did they call it, colonialism? The Virginia Senate is going to come up with a committee, and hopefully it's just an inane committee of people who just want to be seen behind a podium because they have a re-election campaign or they fancy themselves an attorney general at some point, and they're going to come up with the worst case scenario. Of course, as I said, is the idea that they might actually write new laws that then police officers are going to be tasked with enforcing. And if those laws are found to be unconstitutional, the first people who will protest against the police officers are the very elected officials who put the laws in place in the first place. There. We're done. We can go home early. That's it in a nutshell. No, so one of the features, I guess you want to call it that, and I've been in the room. I know how the federal government will fund these kind of activities. So there are law enforcement officers who were trying to keep people out of the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th, 2021. There's some graphic video and everything. This is one of the Capitol police officers, Michael Fanone, was in Charlottesville to do some appearances, stopped by our friends at CBS 19, and gave a little background into what went on and what's happened to them since. Are we not hearing any of the audio that goes along with this? Doesn't seem like we are. All right. He's out on tour, going around to communities talking about his post-traumatic stress disorder, how he had a heart attack while he was being tased by the protesters, and all understandable. I mean, if you've ever been hit with a stun gun, tasers, anything like that, you can attest that it is not a pleasant thing. So anyway, we'll figure out why we didn't get the audio. But it's the point being is that we're getting now a tour of police officers who have been assaulted by these rioters on January 6th. And I don't have a problem saying what you were watching there in the video of these police officers getting attacked by people is wrong. But where are the police officers that were involved in defending like the courthouses in Seattle and Portland and those places? Where were the police officers who found themselves run afoul of the Chop Chaz zone? Where are those police officers telling us their story? Let me get to you at 434-882-4217. Good morning. Who's this?
Hey, Joe, it's Clark.
Hey, Clark. So my question is, where are the police officers who I'm sure face the same stresses and if not an equivalency, certainly a level of disquiet facing down the Antifa rioters of the Summer of Love, as we were told it was really going on?
Well, you started out with making the unborn oppressed.
Oh yeah, you like that? What do you think of that idea?
But now, here's the thing: it goes along with the J6 Antifa situation.
Okay.
In that we have to see some kind of control of the narrative. So far, we've allowed the left to have total control of that, and therein lies a lot of the rub. Now, you kind of got me going on something here. You mentioned that the police are responsive to elected officials, correct?
Well, yeah, they're the ones who pay their budgets. Yeah.
Right. Now, the left would like to do away with local policing because it's non-uniform, it's racist.
Well, they use all that narrative. They use that narrative, but what they really want to do is they don't believe they're ever going to lose a federal election again. So they believe they have unquestioned control of Congress and the White House. So why let these Republican governors and mayors in these red areas, don't let them have anything to say. They're racist.
What's another name for the police department, Joe? What else might you call them?
Law enforcement, constabulary. I'm not fine.
Yes, enforcement, police force. Now, the left is not going to have a force that they don't control. And it's very difficult to get control of every local police department, which has to be responsive to the mayor and the city council, which has to be responsive to the local voters. So ultimately, local police are responsive to the local population.
Sure.
And here's the thing, Joe. You cannot have a police state if the police are responsive to the people.
Okay, I follow you. Right, because if the police are more worried about what the citizens do, but hasn't it always been in the cases of these totalitarian regimes falling apart that the police officers are usually in the avant-garde of that uprising because they start realizing that they're arresting their own aunts and uncles. We saw it in Russia. We saw it in totalitarian Germany and France, and Italy as well during World War II. It's the police officers who started realizing, hey, I'm not doing what I've signed up for, and they start the counter revolution.
Well, I've got to presume that fundamentally everybody that starts out wanting to be a police officer wants to see right and justice done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, they're probably the first to become disillusioned because they get to witness that firsthand, right?
Sure. And they're celebrated because if you ask, especially federal law enforcement, Clark, if you ask them, so if Donald Trump gives you an unconstitutional order, you'll defy it, right? And we celebrate the idea that some Pentagon official will ignore orders of the civilian leader of the government, coup d'etat, by the way, because it's Trump. But if Joe Biden's administration gives you an unconstitutional order and you follow it out, well, you're just a good citizen then.
Yeah, definitely. Somewhere along the way, who gets attracted to what positions has changed. I'm quite sure that there was a time when people that were attracted to being journalists wanted to tell the truth. They didn't want to shape the narrative. I think the vast majority of people that are attracted to mainstream journalism now they want to further a cause. Oh,
Well, or they're paid to further a cause. I mean, let's not forget there's public
yeah.
relations or journalism, and to your point on that, Dr. Clark, journalists generally wanted to tell their neighbors what was going on. That's why you had local newspapers. That's why you had local radio shows and things like that, because they wanted to explain something that was going on to their neighbors, and that was going to be the role they fulfilled in their communities, and then. I think we lost the handle on the toboggan, and it just went off the ski jump the wrong way, because the PR people, the people who are paid to read press releases and things like that, they have become just like I am. I mean, they dress up the same way I do. They sit in the studio the same way I do, and they look into the camera the same way I do, but they're being handed public relations forms rather than going out and saying, "Hey, what happened here? What happened at this abortion clinic? What happened on January 6th? Tell me your story. Tell me the story of some law enforcement officer that said, there are pictures of law enforcement, all this video that's supposedly still out there that we haven't seen yet, of law enforcement officers just saying, yeah, you guys want to come?" They're like ushers rather than confrontation. So how is it a law enforcement officer in this portal is having this violent interaction? And I'm not denying the videos there that they had, but then when the videos show up of police officers like helping people onto elevators and whatnot to get to Nancy Pelosi's speaker's office, you say, okay, well, how is this so disparate, the interactions and the question? And we browbeat journalists in this whole silly narrative of don't yell fire in a crowded theater. The journalist is supposed to be the one saying, anyone else smell smoke? That's their role, and they're not doing it.
Well, I suppose that it is a fine line between keeping people informed and influencing what they think.
Yeah, well, there's that
but
too.
Let's go, Brandon. We've crossed the line.
Oh, we've got just one line, Dr. Clark. Just one line we've crossed. I think we've crossed like 25 or 30. So before we have to run out here, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back. What do you think about the idea? And I know it's only pithy there, but what do you think? At least hearing it out loud, that maybe we should have the unborn fetuses declared an oppressed population, and then that would force people like Hakeem Jeffries and Abigail Spanberger to stand up for them, because you just, as we've watched these Jewish members of the House and Senate stand up against Israel, because, well, we just have to be against anyone who's oppressing a group that we've now accepted as oppressed. What do you think about that campaign? Do you think it has legs?
It's no, it's absolutely, it has legs, Joe, because here's the thing. A very large percentage of our population now has been programmed to protest oppression. And it's primarily young people. And you stop and think about it. College-aged people, they're either teenagers or recently were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by the very nature of being teenagers, they feel they've been oppressed their entire life. Somebody has told them where to go, what to do, when to do it, what time they could be in, what time they could go out. So they're programmed to protest oppression. What is oppression? Heretofore, like I said before, the left has controlled the narrative, and oppression has been whatever the left told them it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hamas is oppressed. Well, we're going out to protest that. Who's Hamas?
We can't let that happen.
Yeah. Who is this Hamas, and why are they oppressed? Those questions aren't going to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
They're just oppressed, so we're going to go protest it. Now,
and some of it is because you're not allowed. Remember, Dr. Clark, you're not allowed to victim shame. So if somebody says I'm oppressed, and you say, "So what are you oppressed of?" He's victim shaming.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
we just got to figure out the lever by which to insert into the narrative that the unborn are the ultimate oppressed, especially when they can be terminated with extreme prejudice.
Very well said, sir. You have a great morning.
Take care, Joe.
Join us on May 25th as Memorial Day weekend gets underway at the park in Stanton for Vets for Vets. And the event will raise money for the VFW and vets causes in the area. Thanks again to all of the car dealers of the Shenandoah Valley who are getting behind this car show. Vets for Vets at May 25th, starting, I think, at about 9 o'clock in the morning. But it's going to be going on all day. Great car show, great event, and great fun to be had to raise money for veterans' causes in the area.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning, and thank you for you letting us do what we do. Live, unexpunged phone calls. So I'm trying to find this. You've seen the billboards. You've been down by the West Virginia border, live nude girls. Not to be, but there's got to be a way we can play on that phrase. Live, insert modifier, callers. There's got to be a modifier. You'd think after 37 years of doing this, I would have come up with one, but it's just struck me. So this half of the brain is working on that. Other things afoot this morning. 434 again. For that is 434-882-4217 sub decaf. What? I don't know. 434-882-4217 was what I was trying to say. We'll fix that in post-production is the phone number. Emails, jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. You can also chat with us through the Rumble and or YouTube chat functions there as well. So by all means, jump in that way. Any and all are welcome. And if you've got a stray hair about a subject, who is that? K Mason 121. Good morning to you as well. If you've got a stray hair about something that I'm not talking about at this moment, or maybe we did talk about over the past month or so, and you've been stewing on it, or you've been ruminating on it, we'll shout back. We used to, in the old days, charge a germaneness surcharge. It was like a cuss jar. If you called in and you were talking about something other than what we were in the middle of conversating about, we put $1 in the cuss jar for you. But it's, because I know you're listening, and then maybe you get somewhere where you can make a phone call. Hands-free only, please, there. So, again, other things afoot this morning. What is bipartisanship? And by the way, we're going to visit Tony Woodleaf from the State Policy Network has a book out called I, Citizen. And it's been turned into a film called Undivide Us. And he picks up on that same feeling, like we've all been set at each other, so that the analogy I've used is the bar fight. Like somebody starts a bar fight so that you don't notice that while everyone else is brawling in the bar, he's behind the stick, emptying the cash register till. So we're going to get in with him on that coming up a little bit. But further into this, the nomenclature, the the way that we're being gaslit is under this idea of partisan versus bipartisan. The Dick Lugar Center for getting Dick Lugar's name mentioned posthumously again has released their most bipartisan legislators report, and I think for the second consecutive year, if not at least the second time, Virginia's 7th District Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger has been named the most bipartisan member of the U.S. House and Senate. And it's a metric that they try to explain in the story of votes and committees and often, and this is where the narrative comes in, often it has nothing to do with the substantive votes, but votes taken in committee on matters to be brought in. And all you really have to do to score well, I think she got a 1.36. Not sure if it's out of 10 or not. If it's out of 10, we're really not as bipartisan as we'd like to portend to be. But it's a lot of the metrics revolve around votes cast in committees that actually have no bearing on what actually, well, that's an overstatement. They have some bearing on what will wind up actually coming to the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. So you can hear her opponents, and we should start getting the 7th District people on here too. I don't know what happened to John McGuire. He has ghosted us. I don't know. I text him directly. So people hit me in email saying, "How come you've not, can only ask. If they don't want to come, I can't go drag them in." That was the old fairness doctrine. The old fairness doctrine, when it existed, would allow a political opponent of something, or even just a societal opponent. Let's say I wanted to interview somebody regarding the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but Red's family, just the victors in a lawsuit, a legal appeal of a lawsuit settlement, on the monies, the $800,000 they got along with the money from Vlad the Invader, because we caught the Soviet Union funding Red and her movement against the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So she's also got some taxpayer money coming too, because the 800 acres or so that Red's family owns, because she's wealthy, but she can climb a tree. And she got $800,000 in a ruling. But if you question what's happening, then you're not partisan. If you pick a side, you're not being bipartisan. And we've allowed ourselves to be gaslit into this world of, I just have to give in to what they want. And this was kind of the point of Tom Garrett's visit yesterday regarding the Senate budget deal. Are there the implicit tax increases? Are there the potential for tax increases when collections at the state level don't continue to track the way they have been because of the tax cuts? Sure. But the governor did keep us out of things like Reggie, which was a passive tax increase for now, until maybe the next governor comes along. Could that be Abigail Spanberger? But her votes, her opponents will run ads saying she votes the same as Joe Biden every time. She votes the same as Chuck Schumer every time. She votes the same as Nancy Pelosi every time. You've heard the ads. And those votes are the votes on the floor. So how does the Dick Lugar Center get to say she's the most bipartisan if she votes the same way Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley and Chuck Schumer vote? How is she being bipartisan? Because in these committees where it's decided, what's the definition of is, and can we get 6 pages on who defined is for this report, and please send it to me in triplicate by Thursday. Those votes, she often will vote in favor of things Republicans want. So that when the Dick Lugar report comes out, she's sanctified as the most bipartisan ever. Now we flip and we go across the aisle, to Virginia's 5th congressional district, where the Main Street Republicans, the Main Street Committee, Defending Main Street Political Action Committee, to be specific, has been identified as having spent $450,000 into the primary campaign against Bob Good. They also got rid of Congressman King as well for problems, and they even admit. See, this is the joy of it. Say they was oh yeah, we love Kevin a lot. Kevin McCarthy, of course, one of their big fundraisers. And what is the issue of Main Street versus K Street? Because there's the argument that these folks are more defending K Street PAC than they are defending Main Street. And the question is, and when they say, oh no, we were very upset when Kevin McCarthy left, we're not doing this to be punitive, but we were big fans of Kevin. Actually, in the story, we were big fans of Kevin, because Kevin McCarthy would go out and raise lots and lots of money for their political action committee. And like school boards, these political action committees are very lucrative for the people who are in them. And all you have to do, just like the folks in the Virginia Senate who want you to be thinking that they're going to have a subcommittee that's going to keep college kids safe from protesters, these political action committees, make six-figure salaries for their consultants and for their directorate. And they'll run ads and they'll do things that at some point a journalist was supposed to be there to say, hey, can we get into the nuance of this? Just like the ads, and I explain to you, because I've asked, because I know, how these ads that say Abigail Spanberger votes the same as Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer 100% or 95% of the time. How is she the most bipartisan? These two stories don't seem to make sense, but they do if you've dug in and you've asked the questions like, anyone else smell smoke? Which is the question we should always be asking. Before we yell fire in a crowded theater, we should, anyone else smell smoke? And you tell me, I mean, did you dislike Bob? That's not relevant to this. It's understanding that the political action committees that come out and say, well, Bob Good said this, or John McGuire said that. It's a parsed narrative designed to get a political outcome. We just watched our West Virginia, and to Tom Garrett's point, it's more about don't vote for stupid or arrogant or misogynist or corrupt, or you insert the adjective you want. Don't vote for is the key. That's the statement. It's not vote for me because. And I feel like as we go and we'll get Tony Woodleaf in on this, that's part of how we've been defined, and it comes down to those 7 vices that we talked about yesterday and ad nauseum. Our 7 vices rather than our 7 virtues. Amongst them is sloth. I wonder if not the emperor of all of the vices is sloth, because you look at some of the things that are also considered in the vice, and you could make a pretty good case that some of them begin because it's easier. So it's easier to tell the community not to vote for someone else. It's much easier to determine what you're against than what you're for. So we do that. We do that because it's easier. And we have to start breaking ourselves of that. We have to start thinking about what we're for. But just like we saw with the Virginia Senate, sometimes being for things means not doing something on the political level. Join us at Gypsy Hill Park on May 25th for Vets to raise money for the local VFW. Starts that Saturday morning and goes through the afternoon. Amazing cars and fun. Bring the kids as well, thanks to all these car dealers that you see here as well. But join us. We'll be there broadcasting live from Vets coming up at Gypsy Hill Park in Stanton.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
He is Tony Woodleaf, and he's penned a great book, amongst other things, called I, Citizen. And I'm sure Emperor Claudius will allow. It's a blueprint for regaining American self-governance. Tony, welcome to Freedom and Prosperity Radio. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Not at all. So this is, I can't imagine it isn't a large majority of Americans feel, what would be the right word, displeased at least a little bit with the way America has been functioning right now. They may not know exactly why, but I have to think that this is a movement that if you went into a room with 100 people, 80 of them would say, yeah, it's just, something's just not going right. Talk about your process to get to the book and what are some of the things you found.
Sure. And I think that I love that you said 80 out of 100 would say something's not going right. Because one of the things we know is that about 20% of Americans are really highly devoted to one of the two political parties and very ideological. And they're the ones who are the loudmouths on social media. So if you've got a room full of about 100 regular Americans, it'd be the 20 of them who were in the middle arguing with each other and shouting each other down. And 80 of us would be around the walls trying to have a conversation about how our kids are doing in Little League, or,
Right.
you know, what was the church potluck like last night. And so then what happens is the impression we get if we're on Facebook or Twitter or golly, you know, just turn on the TV because journalists love to get the shouting, you know, on the screen. The impression we all get is that most of America is angry and either on Team Blue or Team Red. And the reality is most Americans don't like Team Blue or Team Red. They don't like the party leaders, certainly. They don't like the choices we get every election cycle. And they're mostly silent. And so that's, to me, the reason I wrote the book was the impression we get from the media is that our country's on the verge of civil war and that and we can't get along. And the truth is, most people can get along just fine, and they want to get along and they want to compromise, but it's that 20%, and then there are leaders in both parties who foment all this anger. And the reason they do that is, I believe, because then that justifies their undemocratic, unconstitutional behavior in Washington, D.C., right? Because it's an existential battle every election, and then they can do whatever they want once they have power because they're, you know, supposedly saving the country.
This show flags out of the Charlottesville area, and August 12th, 2017, more appropriately, August 14th, 2017, I had to go on the air at 5 a.m. and kind of sort through the wreckage of that weekend of the David Duke reunion concert that was being held in our local park, Black Lives Matter, Antifa out on the street, the mismanagement of the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, or I would argue the management as they saw it best laying out by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management to kind of foment a riot. And I saw that play out right on the street. There was a plan to get David Duke and his supporters out of Charlottesville quietly along a cordoned off road. Yet when an unlawful assembly was declared, the Department of Emergency Management pushed them out onto the same street where Black Lives Matter was waiting for them. And the riot ensued that wound up claiming the lives of an activist, but also in and amongst two state troopers. But that morning I went on the air and I said, this only really happens when we don't know each other. The less we are aware of who we are, who our neighbors are, that's how we get turned on each other. Because it's easy for Tony to say to Joe, hey, do you know that Tennille is such and such? And I'll go, wow, I didn't know that. And if I hold you in esteem, quite frequently, I'll just believe you because I hold you in esteem and you haven't said anything wrong to me. This was driven home because I was saved during that as covering it as a journalist from a brutal beating, which I probably deserved because somebody was calling me a racist because of the color of my skin, ironically. And I was about to come to blows with him, and he was easily 40 years my junior, and I was going to lose until the president of Black Lives Matter interceded on the behalf of what can only be described as a conservative talk show host and analyst. And because he knew me, he said, no, this guy's cool. And it really drove home the fact that if we take time to get to know each other, know this guy's cool becomes more frequently the answer to these questions of you're against me, I'm against you. But I was having this conversation with a Virginia General Assembly member this week after the budget deal was struck, Governor Youngkin, and he said, if these offices hold this kind of power, even if it's implicitly to us, the funding for my business, the grants that I get, the vouchers for my housing or my internet or my groceries, it becomes easier to turn us against each other because I need this political party in charge to benefit my business or my family. That's really, I think, the crux of where your book begins, is that return to federalism where these people don't have that kind of power, right, Tony?
Well, yeah, Joe, I think that your neighbors, that Tocquevillian kind of impulse is so important. The way I think about it now, having seen this toxic polarization among a real small minority of America that gets blown up in, so it looks like it's a majority. The way that plays out is people don't engage in conversation on the things that matter the most because they just don't want to have a fight. They don't want to have an argument. And if they do engage, they realize pretty quickly, golly, most of us can get along and figure stuff out. And the whole idea behind federalism is push those decisions into communities where neighbors have to look each other in the eye. And you're going to find compassion. I've seen that time and again. You're going to find compassion. Whereas if all the decisions are made in DC and you and I don't have any say over it anyway, then we can flame away on Facebook all day long. We can yell at each other and protest because we don't really have any responsibility for the decision anyway. But if we have to decide in our community, what books are going to be in the library and what's our abortion law going to be, what are our kids going to get taught in school, like all the stuff that really matters, if we have to decide, we get a lot more engaged in ways that matter.
I'll even swing in
America then you trust Americans to make these choices.
And that's really the secret, because so frequently I'll go to things like CPAC and they have their straw poll, and usually the press only covers who won the presidential straw poll, but they always have a sense of the group kind of poll that asks, what do you think the most important issues are? And inevitably, year after year, poverty is the last place issue. It's got 1%. I said, no, this should be the number one issue. The authoritarians will use poverty as the fulcrum to get into our homes and say, no, you need us. But the free society is so much better at dealing with things even like poverty, Tony, where a church group or a community group can say, hey, Joe's out of work, let's help him out a little bit. And Joe then knows the people who are helping him. So there's this buy-in of like, oh, I can't take advantage of it because it's my neighbors who are all helping me out. I mean, it sounds hippie, but it really is how America was supposed to operate.
That's right. And that's how people are inclined. And so when you disempower them, when you take all that authority and you put it in DC, mostly in the hands of people that none of us even voted for, most authority is now sitting in federal agencies. It's profoundly undemocratic. My friends on the left should be just as angry about this. If you believe in democracy, then you know this is not right. But it's absurd if you take a state like Iowa, they have all this food in abundance. And what do? They send their money to Washington so Washington can send some money back so they can feed people in Iowa. Like what? How in the world did DC become the middleman in our communities? It makes no sense. It's just illogical, but we've been acclimated to accept it. And then the hyper partisans have driven us from the square. So we're not even engaged anymore. And so part of the message in my book is re-engage. These are our schools. These are our communities. These are our town councils. We don't have to let the crazies decide stuff because there's a lot more of us than there are of them.
Without question. Tony Woodleaf is on with us. He's the Senior Executive Vice President and Senior Fellow at the Center for Political Federalism in the State Policy Network, spn.org. But he's also the author of the book, I, Citizen. Tony, let's talk about the danger that I worry about is that it's unsustainable. I'm going to borrow a word from the green movement. It's unsustainable. The spending, the borrowing. We see the impact. Everyone's buying between 20 and 40% fewer groceries because their salaries haven't gone up, but the grocery bill has. I fear the inevitable collapse of it because history has taught us time and time from the times of I, Claudius, that when the government finally collapses, the tyranny that comes out of the chaos is far worse than anything that would have preceded it. So how do we pull this plane up before it hits the mountain?
There's a lot packed into that, as a sidebar, but I think it's related, all these, like everybody else, I would watch that show, The Walking Dead, about the zombies, and there's all the zombie movies that were popular for a while. And in all of them, what happens immediately is society, it goes to its lowest common denominator, and it's dog eat dog, man eat man, man kill man. And I always wish somebody would make a zombie movie where most people just pull together and they beat the snot out of the zombies and everything's fine. Because I think in most communities in America, that's exactly what would happen is people would pull together and take care of each other. So I think that we never want to forget the capacity for Americans to take care of one another. But then when you're talking about this apparatus in DC, these two parties that are locked in a death grip, and they will spin us all into oblivion if we let them. So then, to me, the question becomes, how do you break the stranglehold of those two parties over our country? Because neither party, they're consultants, they're leaders. These are not people who have the best interests of the country at heart. And so then you got to ask, well, how do we break that stranglehold? And I wish I had a magic bullet. For me, it comes back to fostering local community. And then from there, once you've got your neighbors and you're spending time in fellowship with your neighbors, then you can start thinking about, all right, how do we get engaged with the county board of supervisors and the town council? And you keep laddering that up, right? And then get engaged with your state legislature so they know you expect them to defend you from the people in DC. And then my center, the Center for Practical Federalism, we've got a whole set of tools we've been developing for state and local leaders to engage directly with federal agencies to stop a lot of their kind of, I would say, bullying of communities. And to me, that's probably the best shot we have. Is there is a lot, believe it or not, that state leaders can do to block, obstruct, litigate, publicize, even refuse to comply with federal agency directives that are unconstitutional. It's just that most leaders don't know what those authorities are. And our whole purpose in our center is to show them all the things they can do. And once you do that, I think you can break that that spending power and all the strings that come with the spending. So there's not a silver bullet, but it all begins with normal people re-engaging in the public square because we've let the ideologues drive us away. And it's we, the people, it's us who should be running things, not the party consultants.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some
join us on Saturday to kick off the Memorial Day weekend to raise money for Veterans Cause VFW at Vets for Vets at Gypsy Hill Park. Starts at 10 o'clock. Lots of great vehicles, not just Corvettes, but certainly lots of those. Everyone's welcome. There's a $10 admission, and the monies go, if you want to show off your car, to Veterans Causes in the Stanton and Waynesboro area. Join Joe Thomas in the morning there as well. Vets for Vets kicking off the Memorial Day weekend.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning on this Wednesday, visiting with Tony Ridley from the State Policy Network. The most recently signed Virginia budget, I believe some 20 to 21% of it is federal pass-through money that, as you described, comes with all those strings attached and everything. And I don't think people realize how small it is. They just realize, oh, my whatever, insert broadcast company, nonprofit, restaurant gets certain amount of grant money or whatever it may be from the federal government, or we get supported by something. So saying no to the federal government becomes anathema because I don't want to lose the money when you don't realize just how small it is. And probably schools are particularly, and law enforcement, I believe, are two of the biggest offender isn't the correct word, but two of the biggest participants in this, where the Department of Justice and the Department of Education send taxpayer money into our schools to say, here's how you're going to do it if you want this money. And it's hard for these schools because they'll come out and say, well, we could say no to it, but everyone's property taxes are going up. And then, you kind of get gaslit into saying, oh, okay, we better do what they say. That's what you're talking about there, right? Is learning that.
Well, yeah, Joe. And one thing, like if you go to our website, if you just look up Center for Practical Federalism, one of the things you'll find is we've established what's called a guidance tracker. And very briefly, federal guidance, these are all the directives that come out of agencies that are supposed to be simply clarifications of the rules. But increasingly, this happened a lot under Obama. I know that's a big shocker. It's been weaponized under the Biden administration. Increasingly, agencies are basically making new rules and regulations, but pretending they're clarifications. And that's breaking the law. Yeah. What happens is they send these dear colleague letters and memos out to school districts or, whoever it may be, 4-H directors, and they tell them, look, it's going to be like this now. And all these people think, oh, we better do it or we'll lose some money. And the dirty little secret is you don't have to do it. They can't do a thing to you if you do not have to comply with guidance. And so half of our work right now is going to state lawmakers and others and saying, hey, did you know that this guidance just landed in your school districts and they want, let's say, racial parity in school discipline outcomes. They want you to look at the race of the child before you make a disciplinary decision, which is so profoundly wrong. We're just letting these lawmakers know this is happening and then helping them understand they can say no. And so a lot right now, the point is a lot of the strings that come with the money are not even real strings. It's a big bluff. And so that's what we're talking about, where we're telling state and local officials, you can say no. And your job is to say no because you're supposed to represent we the people, not some unelected federal bureaucrat who has an ideological agenda.
And I want to stick a pin into the idea of these parties, political parties, because I think that kind of plays into how they get the local officials to go along with this, because somebody's dangling a promotion to AAA or something like that. But give us something to hang our hats on, because I want to hear, because I think a lot of my listeners kind of get that, that hangdog feeling of, oh, here we go again. President Biden has announced he's going to pay for something else, or give us some feeling as to the impact you've been having with that, because that, even if it's 1%, 5%, it's something to go home with and say, all right, we're making a difference.
Yeah, so here's how I think about it is you've got 535 members of Congress, and they between them share maybe 15,000 staff. And then on the other side of things, you've got 2.1 million federal civilian employees. I'm not even counting military. Federal
Wow.
civilian employees. And so the job of this roughly 18,000, 20,000 people, if they wanted to do their jobs, which most of them don't,
Yeah.
but if they did, their job is they're supposed to oversee that 2.1 million people and are spread across, who knows, the federal government can't even tell you how many agencies and sub-agencies it has at this point, but let's say 400. It's a mismatch. So the way we look at it is, okay, there's 520,000 elected state and local officials across the country. Every single one of them has some authority, if nothing else, to start saying no. And if you just get 1 to 2% of them out of the many thousands who say they're conservatives and they believe in the Constitution, if you just get 1 or 2% to start consistently saying no, consistently litigating and publicizing and just raising a fuss,
Yeah.
man, that changes the game quickly, because a lot of the power right now that the federal government exercises is through federal agency directives that everyone has been conditioned to just obey. And if you stop obeying, man, they're in a real bind. And so that's our message is represent your people in your community. Stop giving in every time some agency says you have to do this, you have to do that. Call their bluff. I'll tell you this. There's a Yale law professor who wrote a paper a few years ago complaining about how the federal agencies never take the money back when states refuse to comply. And I thought, this is gold. Thank you, lady. And so we're passing this out to lawmakers saying, look, the other side, they're
Admits
admitting that the feds, they never take the money back. So grow some backbones, right? And start saying no and dare them to try to take the money back. And let's see what happens.
Tony, many, many years ago, the country, I think, had existed constitutionally for all of 8 years. And the president, who was on his way out of office, wrote an eloquent and stunning rebuke of the idea of partisan politics. And the Republican and Democratic parties were a decade away from even existing at that point. So it's not them specifically, but the idea that the members of any of these elected bodies are making decisions based for whatever reason, not about their citizens, whether it's, oh, I was told I can run for U.S. Congress and I'll get support from the party if I do these things. And oh, I could become the undersecretary of the Department of Treasury if I do these things. That power over people's decision making is, I think, the truest form of corruption. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like, we went through a series of party reforms in the 70s, coming out of the late 60s unrest in the Democrat Party. In Chicago, you had the riots. There was a series of reforms that were enacted into law in many states that really put the elites in both parties in charge. You drove the working class out of the Democrat Party, and they don't have a home now. So you've got this very small number of people in both major parties who really call the shots. And these are people who are their donors and their activists. And when you survey those people, their views are so far outside the mainstream of America, they do not represent America. And so that's why we get these choices every cycle between people we hold our noses. And so then at some point, you've got to ask, how do we restrict the power of a small set of donors, for example, to drive all the choices that these parties offer we, the people? And there are options. It's just, for me, step one is for regular people to start re-engaging, even if it's as simple as the most important calling of all, just love your neighbor better.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Any of us can do that. Even if you don't have the courage to go to a school board meeting and speak your mind, and most of us don't, it's scary. You can love your neighbor. And that is what, in the end, saves the world, right? And it's a small thing, but we've been scared out of doing even that.
Well,
so
and
we have to do that.
the gaslighting is profound. And I mentioned this to my audience on January 21st, 2017. I said, you see all this going on revolving around the president. I said, it's not so much about the president as it is about you, because if they can do this to him, they can do it to you. And that's the implication, is that, well, you don't want us to come and investigate everything you've ever done for the last 20 years. So stay out of school board business and that kind of thing. And I find Americans are steelier than I think the bureaucrats thought they were, because they are still standing up, Tony. Let me add, I have three premises, and I'm really just kind of spitballing them to you because they have been kind of itching back in here for some time, regarding this development of power. Guaranteed ballot access for the two political parties, the 16th Amendment, and the mischaracterization of what the Commerce Clause means. I think these three places create so much of what you're describing, that the two political parties are guaranteed to be on everybody's ballot. You don't have to go collect 1 million signatures to get on there. So it becomes a kiss the ring scenario. Who do we pick to be the guy or the gal? The 16th Amendment, which guarantees the federal government gets your money before you do, circumventing the 5th Amendment, which says they can't take your property without due process or reasonable cause, and proving to you the government use, and the Commerce Clause, which I think has been so, the phrase to regulate in the 18th century meant to make sure everything was kept regular. Now it means to control and to cajole. What do those three things do towards exactly what you're fighting at the center, at the State Policy Network?
No, it's a good question. Like, because these are all structural things, and I'm a political scientist by training, and so I was always taught, look at the rules of the game, because the people in charge, if they want more power, they try to change the rules of the game, and that's what a lot of these fights are over. So the guaranteed ballot access, like, I think, the challenge there is how the parties have created a monopoly. They keep other people off the ballot. Even remember Ross Perot. I mean, what fun that was, and Admiral Stockdale. What an honorable gentleman up there on that stage with those other jokers. Wouldn't it be nice to go back and try that again? But the two major parties, they made sure after that whole debacle for them, they made sure they changed the rules. There's no world in which you ever get another third party candidate up there with the two, nominated princes from each side. And you see this in states, both parties do it. They do everything they can to keep anybody off the ballot. So I think one thing you've got to figure out is, how do we crack that monopoly that they've got, and then let them be on the ballot? I mean, their brands are terrible. Most Americans now say, I don't identify with either party. That's how bad the brands of the Republicans and Democrats are. 16th Amendment, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you unwrap that one. Yeah, I do think it's comical that tax day is as far as possible on the calendar away from election day.
Yes.
So maybe if we could just move tax day to, let's say, October 31st, because it is a nightmare. Let's see what happens then. In the Commerce Clause, I think right now the fight, as I see it in DC, and these are the big legal groups on the left and the right, the fight is, first of all, and we see a Supreme Court case coming in June, to reduce the amount of discretion that agencies have carved out for themselves over the years to redefine laws as they see fit. So we see that's going to be clamped down thanks to a conservative judiciary. And then the other thing is, we can expect cases that limit the ability of Congress to just delegate all the authority to agencies. So now Congress is in a real bind because they can't write a vague law that makes them look good and then let agencies do what they want. But they also likely are going to have difficulty writing laws that give lots of specific power to agencies, because that's Congress's job to do that stuff. So then what are they going to do? Golly, they might actually have to govern for a change. And maybe that'll change the kinds of people who run for office, right? If they realize, you might have to do a job when you get there, maybe that'll have less appeal for some of the folks who are there now.
A friend of mine ran for Congress and was elected and was a farmer and a lawyer, but yeah, everyone needs a hobby. And he tried to get on the agriculture committee because he thought, I'm a farmer. I should probably have, some say. And they said, oh, no, you don't raise enough money for the party to get on that powerful committee. And that's another one of those things that I think that documentary, The Swamp, highlighted, which was there was a price list for these seats on these committees, which again makes the party more powerful than the representative when it comes time to stand up because, well, you're on the defense committee or the treasury committee. Whoa, you're not going to give that up for anything. What is your feeling? Last candle to light, Tony, before we go. What is your feeling regarding those 80% of us that are in this party, this mixer, saying, "Who are these people around the wall, and why are they yelling?" About getting it back. What is your gut tell you?
I really do believe, I mean, and this is probably just my Christian faith. You begin, like the world has been made so bad by people who want to reform everything in it except themselves. And I think, all right, well, what's the reverse of that? Well, what are we called to do? Reform yourself first, right? Work on your own soul.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means you can't do that without learning to love those around you. And if we make that concerted effort, first of all, we're inoculating ourselves against the poisonous messages that we get from the leaders of both parties and the media. And then some of us who have the courage and wherewithal, as we build our little communities, we have the courage to take a step further and say, you know what, I'm going to run for town council, or I'm going to go county board of supervisors, school board.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to build these little communities of care, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we build out from there. That's how you take a country back, is one heart at a time, beginning with your own.
I guess it's as you said, it's like you eat the elephant one bite at a time. Tony, I appreciate it. Are you going to go out on tour with this book, or are you going to be, doing book signings at Amazon?
I have done some book signings and that sort of thing. We have a documentary related to the book that's out. It's called Undivide Us. And if you watch that, you'll see we just get regular Americans in different cities
Mm-hmm.
together, sit them down at a table, get them talking about the hardest kinds of things, crime, racism, immigration. And man, I'll tell you what, it really warms your heart to see people from all over the political spectrum treat each other with such compassion, complete strangers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it wouldn't surprise me at all. We used to live, I had a home in Charlottesville City, and my neighbor was the chair of the local Democratic Party, and she and my wife and I would sit in our backyard with a fire pit going, glass of wine, and, maybe we'd complain about city council, even though they were all members of her political party, but she was the most wonderful, giving, Christian woman who would take in family members who needed help. I'm like, how is that not somebody that you want your kids to grow up to be more like? And that's, I think, what you're getting at, Tony. And thank you so much for doing it. So it's Undivide Us is the documentary. Is it YouTube, or where should people?
Right now, there's a website if you want to look it up. It's still doing the film circuit, and it's won some awards. And then, the way that works is later in the fall, we end up on some kind of platform. Will it be Hulu, Netflix?
Okay.
I don't know, but.
Well, I'll call Joanne Skousen at Freedom Fest and see if she'll get you screened out there at this coming Freedom Fest this summer. Tony, thanks so much. Safe travels, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you. And it is time for us to open up Mac McDonald's notebook there and for all to see. And good morning, Mac. What do you got going on for us in the sports world? They're not firing. Yeah. Just got to have a reminder sometime.
You know, that's the old Pete Gillen thing. And Rick Carlisle pulled off the Pete Gillen thing too. Anyway, game 6 Thursday, Minnesota. Game 5 in New York, the Knicks took the Pacers to the woodshed. A 69-point first half set the tone for a 121-91 win in the Garden. Jalen Brunson had 44, his 5th 40-plus performance in New York. And so now the lead is 3-2. I'll get more back to Brunson in a minute. The Knicks can make the finals Friday night with the road win. Brunson was 18 for 35. He scored 28 in the first half. That's a franchise record. If that's not enough, his 5 40-point games, the most since some guy named Michael Jordan did it in 1989. By the way, you go back again, Jerry West had 7 in 1965. Just saying. The Pacers led early and with the Knicks scoring 38 in the first. Coach Rick Carlisle burned 3 timeouts. That was it. He had seen enough. The Knicks have now reached the conference finals in 24 years. Nats split a doubleheader with the White Sox, winning game 1 6-3, losing the nightcap 4-0. Orioles, Blue Jays postponed in Baltimore. Yankees beat the Twins 5-1. Philly shut out the Mets 4-0. All right, golf's second major this week in Louisville and Valhalla, the PGA Championship. Now, Tiger Woods met with the press yesterday. He has a lot of memories from one of his 4 Wanamaker trophies, and his second PGA title came in 2000. It was a playoff with Bob May. Tiger had to make a 10-foot birdie on 18 to force 3 extra holes, okay? On the first playoff hole, number 16, Woods produced an iconic memory, an image, making a birdie, pointing at it, and then running after it. A little Tiger montage for you.
Tiger Woods for his birdie. Oh, he's running after it. He ran after it. He got there before the ball did. I don't believe it. How about that? I've never seen him do that. Here we go. Now watch it. Right there. I got it. I got it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it.
Making the putt on 18 and getting into the playoff and making a nice putt on the 16th hole, run after it. A lot of great memories from that week, and it was a fun week. Unbelievable moments, really.
Sure. We've all had those, right, Mac? We've all had those.
The summer, that was, Joe, the summer of 2000, Tiger won the U.S. Open, the British Open, and the PGA Championship. That's when it was played in August. And followed in April, in 2001, won the Masters. He owned all 4 majors known today as the Tiger Slam. And as I said, his odds this week, 125-1. New father, Scotty Scheffler, is 4-1 to win. All right, UVA still leads the Baton Rouge Regional. Speaking of golf, 4 guys in the top 10. They're playing great. They have a 5-shot lead over Auburn. If you're sitting in your cubicle today, your office, go to golfstat.com. You can follow what's going on. No video, but you can follow the scoreboard, and it can be a lot of fun. Top 3 teams will advance to the NCAA final. And as Joe and I were talking about, WNBA opening night, the Sun outshined the Fever and Miss Caitlin 92-71. Clark had 20, turned it over 10 times, was 5 of 15 from the floor, and got knocked down like a Des Moines, Iowa bowling alley. She played a team high 31 minutes and was just manhandled. So of course,
Pun intended, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. And Caitlin, yeah, you might want to. She looked so defeated in the press conference. Like, we'd like to welcome you, Caitlin. Thank you for putting WNBA on the map. Thank you for selling out the arena. Now we're going to kick your fanny.
Isn't that what NFL training camps are for? So the veterans
Absolutely.
can teach the rookies.
Yes.
This is not college two-a-days.
Yeah, this is not the game that you dominated for 3 years at the University of Iowa. So it's a big difference. So anyway, that storyline though, it's going to be worth following. Throughout the throughout the year, just to see how she handles it.
And I know you're a Caitlin Clark fan. I mean, I think this just makes the story better because
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Every rom-com, I'm sure your favorite movie from this past weekend, Frosted, I'm sure at some point had that, everything is going great, the hero of the story is everything's going great, and then when the music changes to that, minor key, that something is afoot, something's going to come along that's going to throw a fly in the ointment. So this is just that moment where Caitlin is sitting alone and somebody throws a box of cereal at her or something, and then she has to have that Rocky Balboa moment where she starts coming back up. It's just the way the stories are told, right, Mac?
Yeah, and if you go back to the Kurt Warner movie, I'm thinking Iowa and Des Moines. Here's a guy that worked at Hy-Vee, played at University of Northern Iowa, got his chance, wins a Super Bowl. So again, it will definitely be the story to follow. You know what? I had some time. Well, the Knicks game was a blowout, and I wasn't going to stay up for the Nuggets anyway. But
I was going to say yesterday it was nice to have a couple of NBA games that were decided by less than 50 points.
So with the Knicks game, so I got sucked into the ESPN 30 for 30 document. It was the documentary on OJ, made in America from start to finish, and I couldn't put it down, and I ended up staying up too late. My wife was working in the hospital; she got home late, and so I just couldn't put it down. And now we're into the trial and oh my God, it's just so.
And people forget in the other part of the programming of this program, I pointed out right after Orenthal passed away, I said, remember all the Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace, all of that stuff came from Johnny Cochran because he was trying to get.
He was a master.
Protesters outside of this, and I remember Chris Darden. Was vehement and got in trouble with the DA's office.
Great memory.
Said this guy ran faster away from the black community than he ran through those airports in the commercials. I remember this.
No, that's a great memory. And leave it to Seinfeld, of course, to have their version of Johnny Cochran working with Kramer on spilled the cup. They spilled the cup of coffee. They spilled the cup of coffee. Oh, I think we need to. It was the Kramer character was
that lawyer in Seinfeld was just such a and everyone says Seinfeld was milquetoast. Something like there were things woven into Seinfeld that like that.
The magic bullet. The magic bullet, which was the magic loogie.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh!
And going through a masturbation thing with not even using the word.
Yep. No.
No. We could talk for hours on Seinfeld for sure. But you're exactly right. It was so good. But you leave the top on? Did you leave the top on? And you say you put the top on? Yeah, it's just
that's right. And
so good.
But it's interesting though. You were talking about the 30 for 30s and all these docudramas. People forget the Jordan rules. People forget. Even the Last Dance, and it goes through that whole last season, and Air. All of it kind of leaves out those. I forget how many years it was, Mac, but it was probably 5 or 6 years where Mike and the Bulls would make the playoffs only to run into Bill Laimbeer. Literally run into Bill Laimbeer and
the losses.
Get ousted.
Absolutely, yeah. You forget the losses
and all those guys, yeah.
One of Jordan's messages that's on Instagram now, a lot of it, the inspirational messages that I look at all the time. Jordan goes, you forget that I missed 60% of the time. You just
Right.
forget that of all the greatness, I miss 60%. The baseball guys will go, like George Brett, you forget that, I'm in the Hall of Fame, but I
67%.
miss 70% of the time.
Right.
So
That's
it's,
it.
it puts things in perspective.
So for Jim in Greene County, who was quick to point out that your audio wasn't turned up at the beginning of the report, it's okay. He was just telling us that the Pacers and Mike Malone of UVA fame, from the UVA bench to the NBA bench, one on there. But you have a good morning, sir, and we'll
you too, JoJo.
Check into your notebook again tomorrow.
Yep, I'll see you tomorrow morning. It's Thursday.
Join us at Gypsy Hill Park for Vets for Vets coming up. It starts at 10 o'clock Saturday morning, May 25th, kicking off the Memorial Day weekend. Vets for Vets, Gypsy Hill Park in Stanton, thanks to these great car dealers, but all to raise money for some great causes. And if you have a car that you would like to show off, there's cash prizes, dash plaques for the first 200 vehicles registered, and the entry fee is $10 and vehicle donations to the VFW. It all starts at 10 a.m. Gypsy Hill Stadium parking lot in Stanton on Saturday, May 25th. Kick off the Memorial Day weekend with Joe Thomas in the morning and these great car dealers and all the businesses behind Vets for Vets on Saturday, May 25th.
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in and being part of it, and every now and then sending a comment saying, hey, Mac's microphone isn't on. But he was just telling you the Pacers routed the Knicks, and former UVA coach Mike Malone and victory circle there for them. Lots we still haven't even tapped into, but don't forget live free phone calls. That was an email from Karen who said, here's one for you, Joe, to use the phrase live you know what, girls, to play off that phrase, since we're now able to take live phone calls. It's live free phone calls. I don't know. I can imagine some legal eagle will say, well, then you need a toll-free number for that. I don't know. We'll workshop it there as well. But, of course, you can send your comments through the YouTube or Rumble feeds. There's a comment section there as well. Or you can just send emails to jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. I posited something earlier on, and if you're just joining us, you may not have heard it. I had an epiphany live on our channel here this morning, and I said, because there's a couple of stories in here about abortions, an anti-abortion activist who broke into an abortion clinic and then lined up and ironically used the same tactics that the pro-Hamas protesters were using. Just got sentenced to 6 years in jail, 5 years in jail, 5 years in jail for that. And there's also statistics that just blow your mind as to how much abortion activity is going on. But all of a sudden, in the midst of all that reportage, it struck me, because I brought up the fact that this anti-abortion activist had gotten into an abortionist's office and along with several of her group members had linked arms and tried to block access to the building. And I said, my gosh, that's just like what they're doing in these college, protests and things like that. You saw at Columbia University. Why, this is the consultation that you see all over and over the place. And it all of a sudden struck me that we may have an opportunity here. And here's the opportunity, and you may not have heard it, but let me get in close here too, because this I don't want everyone to hear this. Okay, we need to find the PR firm that successfully rebranded the anti-Israeli terrorist Hamas as oppressed. Here's why. Here's why we need to find them. We need to find them and hire them to get unborn infants declared an oppressed population. There you go. And then every member of the pro-abortion party will immediately be hung out on their petard in the same way all of those folks who have stood up for Jewish people in America have been hung out because they're member of a political party that demands fealty to the idea that you must fight oppression. Well, what happens when the bad guys, the terrorists who want to blow up your neighborhood and kill the gay people and kill the women who behave independently? There ain't no Title IX in the Gaza Strip. Just saying. There's no WNBA team coming out of Tehran. But these folks who zealously support things like Title IX and gay rights and all of that, they are hung out on this idea of, well, we have to support Hamas because they're oppressed. What a brilliant masterstroke of darkness. I mean, it's dark and it leads to evil, but you have to be impressed by the brilliance. But what if we, those who seek to defend them, and I know that there's the other salacious dance hall suggestion that your humble host has made, which is just give every unborn infant a vote, and then the stampede of politicians running to protect those unborn infants would just trample you. You think January 6th was a trampling? But what if, just think about it for a little while. I'm not saying a knee-jerk reaction, but you call if you like. What if we rebranded the unborn infant population as oppressed? It certainly would be interesting to see all of those members of that one political party that just loves it. Well, hold it. Is it the mother's rights or is it the oppressed community? Isn't the mother the occupying force? Isn't the mother the and I know I'm saying this just to show you the hypocrisy of these folks. So we were talking about some of the frightening things that were found as they started to do actually some statistical analysis. The Society for Family Planning, I know that's a group you're running out. So the Society for Family Planning, believe me, I would be in favor of more people planning families. What have I said time and time again? I'd like to fight abortion by eliminating unplanned pregnancies, understanding where they come from. #WeCount is the polling group, survey group that did this. A survey showed about 8,000 women a month in states that severely restrict abortion or place limits on having one through telehealth. That's their way of saying mail order abortion pills, the milfapristone or whatever it's called. MIF, not MILF? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was milfapristone. My mistake. Anyway, so they were getting these pills through the mail. Additionally, 8,000 women in states without bans or major restrictions on telehealth abortion were receiving pills through the mail through virtual appointments, the study showed. All in all, the study counted 90,000 monthly surgical or medication induced abortions offered by medical providers in 2023. 90,000 a month. I'm saying, I mean, if that many people were killed in Gaza by Israeli IDF soldiers, you think people would be at the White House right now demanding that President Biden do something about it? Do you think President Biden himself, who has announced that he is going to veto the most recent aid package to Israel, I thought that was what the gosh, they change sides so quickly. I mean, at least in hockey, you know that they're switching sides at the end of each period. In football, the teams switch sides at the end of each quarter. I mean, these folks are switching sides faster than the TV cameras can cool down. But do you think if the IDF killed 90,000 Israeli children, or 90,000 Palestinian children last year, you think people would be up in arms about it? You think Ilhan Omar or Ayanna Pressley or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez would have a statement? Do you think they'd be demanding that Chuck Schumer do something in the U.S. Senate about it? I mean, I ask this question because I have my own feelings on what the answer is, which is, hell yes, they would. But you're curious, since you can call me and tell me what you think. And I know the reaction is, oh, Joe, don't do stuff like this. This is how you get kicked off of YouTube. If we get kicked off of YouTube, we get kicked off of YouTube. And we segue from that to a TikTok influencer in Virginia who is suing to stop the federal government's potential forced sale of the video sharing service. Because she's claiming that it's her free speech right to go on TikTok. It's a class action suit. 8 TikTok content creators have sued the U.S. government now, yesterday, filing the suit, issuing a challenge to the federal law that would ban the social media platform nationwide if the Chinese Communist Party doesn't sell its share in this. Attorneys for these content creators, another phrase I didn't get into radio ever expecting to use, argued in the lawsuit that the law violates the user's First Amendment right to free speech, echoing legal arguments made by TikTok itself in a separate lawsuit filed by the company last week. These all are probably going to wind up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Here come the judge. Here come the judge. Here come the judge. But here's the question. I'm not a lawyer. Lord knows I've been around a whole lot more than I ever thought I would be in the last month. Wow. And I love them. I love them all. Some of them are very fine dancers. Some of them write some very nice poetry. But having been around enough lawyers, I'm starting to, get that Inspector Dreyfus twitchy eye. But I also tend to look at these things, and there's a wheel a turning as I read this, because it makes me wonder, having grown up in Queens, New York, where the Gotti family would own what they call neighborhood clubs. And, whenever John Gotti, the head of the Gambino crime family, would be hauled into court by Rudolph Giuliani, his lawyer, Bruce Cutler, would stand out there in an $8 million suit. Nice. Everyone called him the Dapper Don, John Gotti. His lawyer, he dressed way better, and he always looked like he just came off of South Beach. I mean, he was as tan as you could possibly be, but he would stand up there on the courthouse and, "My client is an upstanding member of the Brooklyn community, and he gives money to the Boys and Girls Clubs, and this harassment by the U.S. Attorney Giuliani is just outrageous, and I call on all the members of the Brooklyn community," and it would go on and on and on. But if you are, let's say, a singer, a content creator in an illegal establishment, let's say the MS-13 drug cartels own a nightclub, and they're using it as a front to move their cocaine into the country, or their crack, or whatever it is they're moving, their women, their human trafficking, and you're a singer there, and the U.S. government comes to close it down. You see where I'm going with this? Is that a violation of your free speech, First Amendment protected rights?
Your Wednesday forecast, it'll be a bit cooler with afternoon highs around 70 with some showers around the area, maybe a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Wednesday night showers, maybe a storm before midnight, otherwise lows around 59. On Thursday, a slight chance of a shower, otherwise partly sunny, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. By Friday, a chance of showers late day, otherwise partly sunny, highs returning to near 80 degrees.
From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Just to be bipartisan, every now and then I leave my microphone off as well. Just to be fair, just to show that I'm not playing favorites in that. 434-882-4217 is the phone number live. No more leaving voicemails or anything. If you got something to say it. I don't want to be accused like TikTok and the federal government of and you probably wouldn't chuckle the number of times I've been told that I'm infringing on somebody's free speech rights because I'm not, or I didn't take a phone call, something along those lines. Make it. If you make the phone call, we'll take the phone call there. I want to pivot off. Albemarle County is out on the sales pitch again to talk about 2 construction projects that finally got greenlit this week for 2 schools projects, high school annex, technically, although we don't use that word anymore, but this high school annex and also a new elementary school annex that's not going to increase the number of elementary school population members, and this is where it's weird. So Albemarle County's public schools are going to build a school next to Mountain View Elementary School, and they're going to build it and then not use it as an elementary school. They're going to use it as part of an elementary school. So the population isn't going to change. The population is just going to be split up into 2 buildings now. So first K through 2nd grade is going to be in the original building, and then 3rd through 6th is going to be the other one. And it's interesting because as soon as I saw this, I said, hold it. The city of Charlottesville used to do that. It was a lower and an upper elementary school, and they stopped like 5-6 years ago and said, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. And they originally had done it because, especially as you got to the middle school age, biology starts kicking in and things like that. So they wanted to avoid it. But it is the pork barrel kingmaker of building schools. And you always want to build schools because it's for the children. And when they talk about being for the children, that is an immediate indication that you can't ask a question. Because if you ask a question, then you're against the children. These are, of course, the same folks who will defend women's health care and not being for the children at the abortion clinic. But once they're born and they can be used as hostages in our continuing zeal to create larger and larger. Tom was telling us that Nelson County schools, they're cracking the whip at like $20,000 per student expended. Now, that money isn't actually going to the student. Listen to the rhetoric they espouse when they start talking about money follows the child's school choice. Oh, no. They're just expending that. If you take the school population and divvy up the school spending plans by the number of students, you will see that especially in these communities where there hasn't been a scholastic increase in the number of students, they want to spend more. Why? Because it looks good at Realtor.com. It's virtue signaling with other people's tax money, and it doesn't actually help the kids get a better education. And that, like the green fraud, is the reason they use the children. You have to say it that way. You have to say that like you've just had some intense biological thing happen. The children. And it goes in abstracts from the obvious, where when your county supervisors are discussing the school budget, the school teachers will all, interestingly, show up at the county supervisors meeting with all these children in coordinated T-shirts. Please don't let them fire my favorite music teacher. Get some alumni to come in and say, so-and-so, if you don't give more money to the schools, this department is going to go away. And the first time I watched it, years and years ago, I said, oh my gosh, this is like a bank heist. We have your children, and these are our demands. Here's our demands list. And we keep we put the kids on the school bus to these people. That is why they have such blood sport over it. But the school building, that's the fun. Because school buildings, well, you must build buildings. One of the oldest stories in our curriculum in Central Virginia was the necessity to spend a whole bunch of money to build a high school for Fluvanna County. And the majority of Fluvanna County was against it, but there wasn't a vote coming up for the Board of Supervisors, so they didn't necessarily get a chance to vote out any of the supervisors that might go to spend all this money. And it's a nice school. The floor tiles were coming up within a week of it being open, but you're just a hater, Joe. You didn't want the high school built in the first place. You wanted better water supply access for people. We'll come back for that later. There's always more taxpayer money to get somewhere else. And that's the crazy thing when these folks start going to office to do things. What they mean is do stuff like build schools. So these 2 new schools in Albemarle County are built on the back of the premise that the schools are overcrowded, that there's just no room in the schools anymore. Now, understand, Albemarle County has a rule that says student population of a classroom can't exceed 13 kids. They also have some very restrictive discipline policies, which means you can't really do anything with a discipline problem kid. So perhaps having more than 13 might be a reasonable, but this is one rule making a problem that then has to be dealt with another rule, rather than going back to the first problematic rule and getting rid of it. So the schools, by Albemarle County's own estimations, are overpopulated by a little bit. And it's really interesting because the areas where the schools are overpopulated just 5 or so years ago, they started closing schools. And this becomes the corruption that you see, because these capital budgets are where the funny money goes. The capital budgets are where the easy spend is, because it's for schools create jobs. I was buttonholed by the Fluvanna County executive. His name was Cabell Lawton at the time, and he came up and he stuck his corpulent finger right in my chest, and he said, "Why aren't you on board?" Interesting phrase. Aren't you on board with the high school construction? I said, "Because you haven't made a good case that we need it." "Yeah, but you live in Charlottesville." "Well, I live in Fluvanna now." And I'm still pointing out that these school construction projects are just pork belly projects for friends of a friend of a friend, and they're slush funds that nobody looks into because it's for the children. And you can't be against the children, Joe. I thought you conservo-fascists were all for the children. Yeah, especially the unborn ones that you all seem to forget about. But if those kids survive the birthing process, we're going to use them. And the hypocrisy just gets deeper and deeper. At some point, we'll be able to paddle downstream on all the hypocrisy of it. So that's just another one of those schools. They're going to be beautiful, and they're going to do all these amazing things, and our kids still are not going to come out any more prepared unless we do it, which is fine. I have no problem with it. But look at the budgets. Look at these budgets. Albemarle County's budget is in excess of $750 million for one county. The city of Charlottesville is in excess of $250 million. So just Albemarle County and Charlottesville will spend $1 billion on their local municipal governing for one little area in the middle of Virginia. And you wonder why they're predictably voting blue. You want money? Here's the form. Fill this out successfully, and we'll send you some. But 434-882-4217, I understand that you want to have the best facilities, but keep in mind, the teachers get the short end of the stick. They get dragged out in front of the press to say, we want to unionize, and the folks like Randy Weingarten, the teachers' unions, profit from that. They make six-figure salaries, while our teachers, who are actually in the classrooms, being told don't discipline the kids. This is why there's a school bus driver shortage, because the school bus drivers, less vested in their career than a school teacher who's gone through all the education to become a school teacher. You're kind of down the road a bit. When they were told some of the woke agenda that they were supposed to enforce on the school buses, said, you know what? I'm going to either see if UPS is hiring, or FedEx, if they're CDL license holder, or, as many of them were just doing it because they were retired and it was a nice little part-time job, got them out of the house. They said, I'm God. I'll go be a greeter at Walmart if I really need to get out of the house. That's why the schools are having the school bus driver shortage. Still are. It's because they were demanding school bus drivers, do this woke justice system in the buses. And they said no. And the teachers are facing the same thing in the classroom, and they get paid at the low end of the scale, while the administrators, who never darken the portal of a classroom, make 3 times what they make. Just getting some interesting here is, oh dear. All right, so be aware of this. If you use I-64, just getting a flag on this, the Charlottesville area, Albemarle UVA police, there's an active shooter situation going on. I-64 eastbound rest area just west of Crozet. Shooting into the rest area building. This is happening like right now. I'm just getting this information, so just going from what I'm being told here. I imagine if you're on I-64 eastbound coming in towards Charlottesville, you're having problems with the police activity there. I don't know if they're detouring folks off onto Rockfish Gap Turnpike or not. But shooting into the building, Virginia State Police, Albemarle County Police, and multiple other agencies are involved. Somebody with camouflage, and an active shooter situation going on in the area of the rest area just west of Crozet, but it's on the eastbound side. I'm just going to see if I can get a little bit more of what's going on there. Yeah, they've got it does look like everything is stopped. It's foggy as well as you come down the mountain there, but it is definitely getting through still. So you are still getting through, but this situation is going on right now at the rest area. It slows as you get past the rest area, but the active shooter situation is going on at that rest area on the eastbound side of I-64 as you come down from the Skyline Drive area into the city. So just getting heads up on this active shooter going on there. Thank you to Tommy in the newsroom. And it looks like he's supposedly the whole situation is he's shooting into the rest area building there. I don't know if what the connection is or why. We'll try to get you more details on that. But yeah, heavy volume as you head eastbound on I-64 coming down out of Stanton and Waynesboro right now for this active shooter situation going on in the police activity there. But traffic is still getting through there. But you might want to consider just getting on Rockfish Gap Turnpike anyway there. So try to follow us on social media, and we'll give you the details on it that way as we can. Wrapping up here today, and thanks for tuning in as well. And don't forget to join us, Gypsy Hill Park. But stay tuned. We'll keep you up to date through our social media platforms, Seville Joe Thomas on Facebook, X. Follow us along there, and we'll keep you up to date. Active shooter going on the at the rest area just west of Crozet in this update here. And thanks for tuning in. And until tomorrow, so long. Thanks for all the fish.